All right, welcome to This Oughta Be Good. I'm DJ Mordecai. I am joined by my co-host Samazon Prime. What's up, Sam?
What's happening?
How you doing, sir?
What's up to everybody? Looking forward to doing this.
Yeah, man.
Morty,
We are super excited to be joined by Jorun Bombay. What's up, Jorun?
What's up? Can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
what's
We
up?
can hear you. How you doing?
Cool. I'm doing
It's
great.
nice
How
to
about you
make your
guys?
acquaintance, sir.
Peace, man.
So I wanted to start out by saying shout outs to the Cut and Josh Dunn's Gimpin' Ain't Easy podcast. I really enjoyed your interview with both of those podcasts. So that really helped us, and I wanted to recommend that everybody check those out too. I think
Yeah.
I heard you mention that you were a fan of the Beastie Boys. Is that true?
Yeah, peace. Oh, yeah, of course. Yeah.
What is it about them that you really liked? Was it like the Dust Brothers samples, like on Paul's Boutique, or was it more even earlier than that? Like, um,
You know what? I like their punk stuff too. I really got into their punk stuff later. Like I heard the punk stuff when they were still punk, and
hmm
I'm a late punk catcher honor guy. So I'm heavily into punk now when I wasn't in the 80s. So I actually went back to their catalog and liked their punk stuff as much as their 80s stuff. But I did first hear, the first time I heard the Beastie Boys was when they had the single out, and it came out around the same time as Run DMC's Together Forever.
hmm
And it was the B side of She's On It,
hmm
and that came out in 1985, and it was Slow and
Yeah.
Low.
mm,
And at the time, I didn't know they were white. I didn't even know because we were catching them on Toronto radio. So with the squelch and stuff on the radio, I thought they were called the B Ski Boys, the B Ski Boys. So I was pronouncing it wrong, and
hmm
I was looking for their stuff, couldn't find it because I couldn't pronounce it. So by the time Hold It Now Hit It came out in the spring of
Yeah.
'86, that's when I was like, oh, that's the same group. Hell yeah. And I loved Hold It Now Hit It. I mean, that's probably
Yeah.
when I really got into the Beastie Boys. And this is before the album came out.
hmm hmm
So,
So would you say maybe just describe yourself? I mean, I have an idea of kind of what you're about, but I don't know if everybody watching does. How would you describe yourself, Duran, as in terms of your art?
of my art, man, that's such a broad question. I don't even know how to answer that. I'm a fan first. I was a
Okay.
fan right from when Rappers Delight came out in December. Well, it came out in September '79 in the States, and it
hmm
reached us at a Christmas party in Halifax. It reached us in December 1979 because we here in Halifax, a lot of people don't know about Halifax, but there's a huge black community here and has always been here, and a lot of people don't know that. So anytime black music became big in the States, when it leaked up to Canada, it didn't reach the radio first, it reached the neighborhoods first. And I just
hmm
happened to have moved into the neighborhood in '78. So that was my first introduction to that music anyways, because before I moved into the hood, um, my family is from Azores originally. So my whole upbringing up until I was 8 years old was Brazilian music and Azores and South American. That was it. And then when we moved to the North End here in like May '78, I got to hear disco. Well, I heard disco before I got here, but I heard the good disco, the good
hmm
R&B. I heard the Jackson Five, the Casey and the Sunshine Band, the Rick James. And then when I was familiar with that and already well versed in that, that's when Rappers Delight came out.
hmm
So, like I said, I was a fan for the first 10 years. Uh, and I still consider, like, if I'm not a fan of it, I'm not going to do it. I've
Right.
got to be motivated. I've got to be inspired. So anybody else can say, they're an artist or whatever, but I'm
Yeah.
a fan first.
hmm
Yeah.
Yeah, that's kind of what I was wondering. It seems like from what I know about you, it seems like you've been different things throughout your career. I mean, I even saw that you were a rapper at one point, along with producing. Is that correct?
I was, but that was more out of necessity because I was getting stood
Yeah.
up at sessions and I had to fill those sessions because there was a no
Uh,
money back return thing. and I would
Yeah.
sometimes have backup rhymes in my back pocket in case they didn't show up.
So that's Witch Doc. That's Witch Doc then.
It was very short lived though, because that was
Yeah.
kind of just a very uh, when I actually knew what I was doing,
Yeah.
then I dropped the witch doc, and that would just be, a fill in space thing or whatever, a nom de plume. But now
Right.
I write so much better now, and I've actually, and I know this is going to be brought up in, but I've actually put those writing tools to use recently with four other MCs to do the alternate universe thing that
Hmm.
I'm doing on my podcast, which I'll get into a little later. But I've actually
That's what's up.
pulled the pen back out to be part of that collaboration called the Alternate Universe for Funkbox Reload.
So in terms of your timeline, I'll let Mordecai. I know he's gonna ask something too, but I'm just curious personally, as far as your timeline, it seems like you kind of settled into production, and then from there, kind of got more into soul along with hip hop and edits and production and things like that. Is that a good like summary, or do you not feel that way?
Um, as far as doing the edits and stuff, I was
Yeah.
on the way out of the game when I was doing that,
Mhm.
because I was DJing in Halifax. I had what was started out to be a funk night and then molded itself out of my control to be a retro night. So I was playing a lot of stuff I hated. And to
Yeah.
balance that out in between time, I was just making stuff that only I could understand. And that was instrumentals you never got, series. I was doing my
Hmm.
the Rock the Discotheque um, mixtapes, just to balance out the fact that I was doing my DJ job that I was doing was so horrible that I needed something to keep my sanity, to like, and put the money that I was making into the retro night
Hmm.
into those things.
Sure.
So I was
Sure.
actually on my way out, like gonna sell my equipment. Like, okay, let's get a dead end job. Let's do something else because this is not making any money. Uh,
Hmm.
and then I got discovered by DWG in the UK
Yeah.
through Filmos Chill.
Hmm.
Yeah, I definitely felt that, like, as far as the soul killing DJ gig, because I had one that was like, I think maybe 500 a week or something, and I didn't really want to do it, and I was like, they were like, we really want you to keep doing it. How much would you need to keep doing it? I was like, I don't know, 1,000, and like thinking they wouldn't even do that, and they did it, and I still hated it. I couldn't stand it. Like I was just like, this is killing my soul. Like I'm not playing anything
Yeah.
like I'm enjoying really, and I
Right.
just had to drop it. And sometimes
That's tough.
I miss that money, but I also don't miss
That's
having to
tough.
play like what the same stuff every week. It wasn't really allowing me to like grow and expand and do
Yeah.
what I wanted to do. I was curious, like you mentioned Brazilian music in the house. Do you have like favorite Brazilian artists or albums or bands?
Well, the stuff that I grew up with a band called Os Incríveis, which is the Incredibles,
Mm,
and they're kind of a mix between the Beatles, James Brown, and Sly and the Family Stone, all mixed together. So
sounds pretty good.
Sounds good.
my earliest memory of music was through Os Incríveis. So they actually have breakbeats. So
Mm,
back in the days, before I knew anything about hip hop, they had
Mhm.
drums. So when I later got into hip hop, I went through my dad's collection. It's like, wait a minute, this is about drums, okay? And I go back in my dad's collection and my mother's collection, and sure enough, like, yeah, I was right. There is drums in this, and nobody knows about it.
that's pretty wild.
Mhm. Mhm.
Sam, did you have a question you wanted to go with next, or?
Oh no, I was just listening. I didn't realize your Brazilian roots were like that. Obviously, so much Brazilian music. Somebody like me, I came around to it really late, and I still don't know it extremely well. But I've already recognized amazing things about Brazilian music that I think because of the language barrier, a lot of times you don't even people like me didn't even think about it.
Well, I mean, Brazilian is basically sounds like Portuguese and Spanish,
Yeah.
really. And we're Azorians, so when we came to Canada, my dad could speak many languages. My mother only spoke Azorian. So
Mhm.
we didn't understand the radio. So we would contact my uncle. Can you go get us some music that we understand? And he would go to the record stores in Toronto and buy the records or tape a bunch of stuff, send it to us, and that was our only source of music. So whatever he taped is like, okay, well, this Brazilian, well, they'll understand every second word, so let's tape this. And among that was Osinkravij, was Tom Z, Nilton Caesar, things like that. So for the first 7 years of my life, that's all I knew. I mean, I had my cousins upstairs, and they were 16 years old at the time in 1970s, so they were into Billy Joel. They were into like Kiss, things like that. But they already been here before we got here. We were still new to Canada, so they're already settled in. The music they were into, at 5 years old, you don't care about metal. Like you're barely into music as it is.
Yeah.
So I started to shape my taste in music probably around 8 years old, and that would have been like just as disco was starting to go down and other music was coming up, and then I was starting to form my taste.
Hmm. Yeah, the music you listen to at that age has such an influence on you. I still think about the two or three albums my mom would play when she was cleaning the house, and man, that one of those records I could listen to like anytime and just feels that just it's like comfort food, you know.
Exactly, there's a comfort to that because of your earliest
Yeah,
memories, and if you had, assuming you had a good childhood, the music that was around you is just going to stay with you anyways, and that's exactly what happened with Brazilian music. And I've
yeah,
actually later in life started to go back to Brazilian music for a while because the neighborhood I was in, there wasn't many Azorean people here, so the other music kind of just took over, or
yeah.
it was just not cool to listen to Brazilian music around other kids that thought it was corny or they didn't understand it. So I abandoned it for like a few decades and then went back to it.
Hmm.
Dre
Yeah.
Mays 73 checked in. What's up, Dre Mays? And
So Dre Mays,
Frank Dad's digging wants to know, was that Olivia Newton John? I think that's to Sam.
Frank Engler, what up? Yeah.
Joe Run, can you tell us about Halifax Hip Hop Coalition, Howtown Projects, and like kind of your involvement with that, and like its impact on like your career or trajectory or journey or path or however you want to kind of refer to?
Well, Helltown Projects was it, it's kind of strange. I mean, like explaining it to somebody else because when I talk about Helltown Projects, it's like going into the middle of a novel. There's a lot of things that led up to Helltown Projects even existing because we had a hip hop scene before then, and the things that happened. Well, for one, and I can talk about this. I'm sure the guys are cool about me talking about this. There was um, kids in my older brother's class that ended up later on, a few years later, there were local MCs from the neighborhood, and then they got signed onto a major label later on, and the group was called MCJ and Cool G, and they were on Capitol Records. The same time the Beastie Boys just signed to Capitol Records, so the city already had a scene long before they got signed, but it became a reality to everybody. Wow, you can get signed, like it's a reality. The guys we went to school with since grade 4, you just got signed, and everybody had like a weird, unreasonable expectation, like you're from the neighborhood, you owe it to us to sign everybody, and of course that never happened. So
Mm.
uh, since they never got back, they never came back. They did a few shows, but they're living their life. This is their bread and butter, their job now. They're not required to come back every week and check on everybody and make sure their rap careers are still going. So when they left and they were gone for a long period of time, a lot of people just quit, stopped, except for a group I was in with another MC that started just shortly after they started, before they got signed. And we were pretty much the only group in the city at the time. So uh, as everybody was falling off, just like, okay, this rap thing is just not going to happen. Uh, my group that I was in was called Down by Law. Started off as Down by Law, then changed to Modern World Thing. And we had just put out a single on a record label that out of New Brunswick, a legit record label. But we were the only groups that we could open for because everybody stopped rapping. We had to open up for rock bands, and they didn't respect us. and some of those rock bands became big names later on. But we were in the pool all together, but we were the only rap group. So at the time, one show came, and we got to open for Run DMC when they came to town. So in the crowd at that time was a future MC that was going to be in Helltown Projects. He was later known as Buck 65, but he had a radio show, college radio show, and he was called DJ Critical at the time, and he wanted to interview us on his radio show about what was it like opening for NBMC. What was your conversation with Jam Master Jay backstage? What was that about? So I went up to his radio show. We did the interview. I became good friends with him, and then we just became beat digging buddies. And along that way, somewhere along that way of being beat digging buddies, we met other MCs and some guys from the past, from the mid '80s, MCs that just stopped rapping, and we all happened to be in a room, and they came up with the idea. It's like, Joe, you got a studio. You're tired of opening for rock bands. How about we just form a coalition? Now, keep in mind, this is before Wu-Tang existed.
Coalition.
So let's become kind of like a loose group of groups. And I went to my main group and presented that and said, would you be cool if I did that? And he said, no. We're the top of the mountain. Let's stay that way. And my argument was, I'm getting tired of opening up for these grunge acts, and they're becoming really big right now. One of them just got signed. It was a group called Sloan. And they're only looking after their bands, their grunge scene. They don't care about us, and they shouldn't. So I said, we need to form this coalition. You're not going to like it, and there may be a chance some of these guys are going to be bigger than us. But do you want to rock? Do you want to still do shows with these rock bands that call us, oh, look, MC Hammer, Vanilla Ice? I got tired of it, so we started recording everybody in our circle, and that was the start of this Helltown thing. It grew from there, but that was kind of the beginning of. So it started off as MCG and Cool G getting signed, everybody thinking, oh, they're going to come save us. They're not. Then we had no scene, and I was the only one in the city with a recording studio. Everybody else had to go pay $50, $75 an hour at a studio where the engineer didn't know anything except rock. So you came up with like a demo that sounded like it was recorded by a rock dude, whereas I was at least beat digging, and I kind of, I can bring something to the table so we can sound a little bit more like New York than Halifax. And Halifax always sounded 3 years behind New York until I opened my studio. And even at that time when we were doing that, I was already talking to Phil, Soul Man. So I was up on my breaks and stuff through him. So we were really catching up with New York at that time. And anybody that had promise or potential, it's like, come over to my place. Let's record something. Don't worry about the money. When we do shows, I make the money at the door, and you have free recording studio time. And we kept that going for about 3 or 4 years, and then everybody kind of branched off, and they wanted to be doing what I was doing, and that kind of inspired everybody to get their own home studio. And that was kind of the start of Helltown Projects.
Thanks.
So when speaking of that, you said, I noticed you mentioned Phil Most Chill, and obviously, I mean, we're big fans of Phil Most Chill. We've had him on, talk to him, and real impressed with that guy. 1995, you had a track where you shouted out the Soul Man at the very beginning of the track. 1995. So I mean, that's How far do you guys go back?
When he was writing for Rap Sheet, I wrote in as soon as the first issue came, where he's like top 10 breaks I got to catch.
Yeah.
I already knew of him because at the time when I was going to Buck 65's radio show, I already been out of rap. Like as soon as Vanilla Ice and Hammer came in, I'm like, this is the end. This is over. It's time to do something else. I really thought there was going to be nothing after that. But Buck 65, DJ Critical, he would always show me records because he was in our DJ pool, and he would show me records. And I was never. But
Yes, sir.
he would show me Cypress Hill, and I'm like, yeah, that kind of sounds like Divine Force. Yeah, somebody always sounds like somebody else. And
Mhm.
then one day he brings in baritone tip love. Young ladies drive me crazy. And he said, Joe, you got to hear this. So when he played me the skit for WOLD, it was a skit. I said, this guy has those tapes. So then I wrote into him, not because of those tapes, because of the breaks. But when I wanted to trade records, he said, "What do you want? I could send you, can I get those records from you, Joe? What do you want in return?" I said, "I don't want no records. I want those tapes on WOLD," and he would send them
Yeah.
to me. And those tapes are like between 1978 and 1984 live shows. Cold
Wow.
Crush Brothers, Fantastic Five,
Wow.
Mastodon Committee, and by that time, where the recording that you were just talking about, where I shout them out, those tapes are spread out on the cover of that release
Hmm.
with rare 45s. And
Yeah.
I was sampling some of those tapes in the music on that tape. So I was already hugely influenced by Phil by
Wow.
the time that recording came out. Even the record that I sampled, Semende, that
Yeah.
that Semende record sample I got from Phil
Hmm.
that I'm shouting out and I'm over a Semende loop.
Hmm, that's
Yeah.
dope.
That's a long time. That's amazing. Like, I didn't know you guys. I've seen the Joe Renton PMC projects, but those were in the mid 2000s or around about that time up till now. So I didn't know
Right.
you guys had already been kind of like collaborating or acquaintances for that long.
Well,
That's
I was
cool.
speaking to him since the early '90s. He would tell me
Yeah.
about the record conventions, the Roosevelt, and all that stuff. He would give me lists of records to look for in Canada that he wanted to sell at the conventions, and I was
Yeah.
digging for them here. And it's like, I'll give you these records, you give me those tapes. And that was kind of our first, connection and stuff because he was already showing me the Baritone Tip Love album back then, and
Yeah.
I was familiar with the label that he put on. Was it called Easy Street? I think
Hmm. Yep.
it was supposed to be on Easy Street, and
Yep.
I already had records on Easy Street from the mid '80s, like Cold Rock stuff. 7-Eleven and Hey Son was on that label,
Mhm.
and so I was kind of well versed in New York stuff. So by the time I met him, I already knew what questions to ask. Like he had told me like the whole stories of Peter Piper and Rock the Bells and that stuff because he used to go to like the Rick dormitory and he wasn't hanging out there every day and stuff, but they did go when they submitted a demo. And he told me there is a demo with Rock the Bells where it's over Mardi Gras. And he was telling me this back then. Like you couldn't read this in magazines. So to talk to him on the phone for an hour was a
Yeah.
treat because I was learning
Sure.
stuff that you couldn't read in the source. I was
Yeah.
talking to somebody that was really there, and that was invaluable. There's nothing that's more valuable in that when you're trying to get back in after saying, I'm quitting this rap thing. He's telling me
Sure.
stories from the front line, and that was enough
Sure.
to bring me back.
When
So,
you really
no, I was going to
you
say,
really
big
oh yeah.
credit to him for helping me out early because he didn't have to do
Yeah.
that, and he did. So, shout out to Phil for that.
Yeah, definitely shout out to Phil Most Chill. Absolutely. And it's what you're saying is definitely true. If you have somebody that could kind of be your sponsor or just kind of take you under their wing and just because they recognize your love for the same things, that's I think everybody needs at least one person like that to really inspire, like really kind of get the fire started that much.
Well, I mean, that's kind of why the Joe Run PMC thing came, because I was already a fan of the baritone tip love stuff. So to do a whole album with them was a dream come true. You know, um, it took almost a decade to record. I mean, you hear it, and there's no context to how long it took to record. But we were on that album, recording that album for almost 10 years. That was almost
Uh,
10 years in the making.
I want to kind of go through. We're getting a bit ahead. I wanted to go through some of your discography. I know it's really deep, so I call it a selected discography.
Okay.
Just kind of pull out things here and there that we wanted to talk about. Um, One of the first ones I think you already kind of touched on. This is your cassette maxi single, "Modern World Thing," "Faith
Yeah,
in Our Music," and that's you and it's J Rock, right?
that's J Rock, the original J Rock. There's, I don't know if you're familiar with, and this has to be mentioned because you ever see the movie or the TV show called Trailer Park Boys?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think he's.
The J Rock in that is a disrespectful parody of the original J Rock.
There's a connection, right, where like the director, like from the music video or something, like went on to work on Trailer Park Boys, right, or something to that effect. I feel like I read that.
Well, I was supposed to be in the pilot episode because the guy that shot our music video for Modern World Thing was the producer of Trailer Park Boys before Trailer Park Boys.
Mm.
So he told me that he wanted to use Metropolitans, which is the one that I shouted out Phil, in the pilot episode as like just kind of like somebody playing a boombox. What's that? That's Modern World Thing. You never heard of Modern World Thing? And he told me that.
Yeah.
I'm like, yeah, cool. But then he couldn't get sample clearance. But when he came up with the J Rock character, we were super insulted because he said it was kind of a mash between me and him, but kind of like the Vanilla Ice version. And to this day, we
Yeah.
have not seen him since that day, and we're still fuming mad over that.
All right, maybe we
Yeah,
should move
I
on to
could,
the next project.
Yeah,
yeah. I don't mean to laugh. I don't mean to laugh. It's just like the whole situation sounds like ridiculous, you know?
yeah, it is. But Halifax is a small place. There's 1,000 stories. But anyways, let's move
Yeah.
on to the next thing.
In full transparency, I did ask before yesterday
Right,
if there was
right.
anything off the table. The Modern World Thing was
No,
not
no,
mentioned.
I'm an open book. Believe me. Everything I say in here, I could back up what I say.
That's a great story though.
Is this your first mixtape or
No, that's the first of a series
okay?
of the old school stuff. I was making mixtapes before that, but this is when this is around the time when I was starting getting into the old school stuff because of the old school tapes that Phil gave me.
Mhm.
And I just started going back into the records that I couldn't get. And Phil was sending me some of the old stuff that I couldn't get on vinyl. And when I would accumulate some of that stuff, I said, wow, like this is the perfect time to, because at the time Cash Money did a old school you need to learn though
Mm.
thing. And I
Mhm.
saw that there was an interest. So not that I'm trying to copy off Cash Money. Cash Money is untouchable. But I wanted to introduce people in my neighborhood that were like 10 years younger than me. And at that in 1997, like here's where it came from.
Mm.
Boom. And I was also showing my DJ skills as well.
Mm.
So
And
there was more than one of those. That's just volume one. There was a volume two as well.
yeah, I mean, like I said, this is selected discography. I'm just trying to kind of
Right.
hit the
That
highlights.
definitely looks like it was drawn by Filmos Chill though.
It's a
No,
man
that was me.
cover, right?
I
Like
did that.
that.
I did the cover.
You drew that?
I did that, and then I took a
It's
photograph.
the style. It's that style, like the Mantronic style, like some of Phil's style. That's
Needle
pretty.
to,
You drew that. That's dope.
needle
Well,
to the groove, right?
I copied Needle to the Groove. I redrew it. Then I took water paint. I painted it because it's actually
That's dope.
bigger than that cover. And
Mm.
then I took a picture of it, shrunk it down. So
That's
it's
dope.
actually a real painting.
Nice, good job.
Wow.
Thanks.
Is this your first vinyl solo?
No, recording wise, that was on Helltown 2 under a different name.
Mm.
That it was called Summer Jam with Witch Dog and Flexman.
Mm.
But at the time when Witch Dog and Flexman Summer Jam came out, it had lyrics over Joe Runs Way. We had signed a publishing deal that didn't turn out too well. But 10 years later, I still believed in the song. So I went to them saying, I would like to release Summer Jam as a 45 because somebody wants to help me put this out. And they said, well, we still own Summer Jam. So I went to a lawyer and because I didn't know much or whatever. And I said, so what can I do about this? And they said, well, what did you sign? A publishing deal. Is there samples in the song? Yes. Well, they own the lyrics. They don't own the beat. It's all samples, right? And I like, yeah. And I said, okay, well, just put it out as an instrumental. I went back to them, said, I'm going to put out Summer Jam as an instrumental. Well, we own the name Summer Jam. Okay, well, then I'm going to call it Joe Runs Way. And I released it. And that came out 10 years after. And even before that, to rewind a little bit, that was supposed to be a song on Modern World Things EP.
Mm-hmm.
So, and the whole thing was stemmed off of the Run DMC show. Jam Master Jay put me up on some records, and those records he put me up on ended up being the samples for Joe Runs Way. So it goes back really far, but I kept believing, like, damn, like the song was so good and nobody's hearing it. And at the time when I made it, I was super inspired by a roller skating jam named Saturdays.
Mm-hmm.
I was trying to make my own version that had the same feel without the same samples, but I was hugely influenced by De La Soul's Saturdays. And I said, I want something that gives you the same feel as that. So when I re-released it as an instrumental, Joe Runs Away, things started happening for me. Like Jeff started playing it. Judge Jeff. Scratch Bastard was playing it. All these other people. So it came back out of the dead, and it got another life that just kind of lifted it back up. And that's kind of like, that's the record that kind of is kind of hugely responsible to where I am today.
Sorry if I'm moving quickly, but
no, it's okay.
you touched on DWG. I wanted to mention DWG Rampage. Can you talk about that track?
That was started off as what's it called? Instrumentals You Never Got.
Mm-hmm.
And as they were being passed around, I guess if I remember right, I probably passed it to Phil, and Phil may have showed the other guys and said, "We got to do something with this," because it wasn't just the beat. I redid the scratching the same way DJ Scratch did.
Mm-hmm.
So it was hard to do, but like once I nailed it, it was the only instrumental version ever available because they never released the instrumental. So they're like, "Oh, we got to do something with this." And then when they did, I mixed it down and everything. We showed DWG, and they're just like, "Oh, geez, this is great. What are we going to call it?" Well, it's Rampage, and it's on DWG. It's 3 MCs. Let's just call it DWG Rampagers. And I was like, "Okay, whatever. Do it."
So speaking of the Rampagers, let's bring them in. We got, you said Phil, right? Phil Most Chill.
What's up, Phil?
Yo, what's up, Jorun Bombay?
What's up, man?
What's up?
And who else was on there?
Oxygen was on there.
Oxygen, right?
Oh!
And you got MC. There we go.
We got the whole crew in the house. That's what's up.
Yo!
All right.
Salute, fellas.
What up?
Yes.
Welcome.
Peace.
I wasn't sure if this was going to happen. I appreciate you guys hopping on.
Indeed.
So Phil,
Absolutely.
since you've got kind of the deepest connection, can you kind of talk about this particular project or maybe just your relationship, leading up to this with Joe Run?
All right. Well, if you want me to start with my relationship with Joe Run, that goes all the way back to the 90s when I was writing for Rap Sheet magazine.
Mm-hmm.
Joe sent me a letter. I can't remember if he sent me a letter or he called me because, like a fool, I put all my information in the magazine so people could just call me or they could knock on my door or whatever.
Wow.
But
They could call you then.
Yeah, Joe got in touch with me, and he was just so inquisitive, and then he would let me hear some of his stuff. He's so talented that then we just like built up a friendship and a bond and everything. And I sent him some old school hip hop tapes, and he would send me some records from Canada, and and then we stayed friends since all this time, and then started doing work together, and but as far as like the Rampagers, me and the fellas Ox and M Ski, we did something for DJ Format, well, me and DJ Format's album, and then that came out so good when this opportunity came up to do the DWD Rampage. We all got on it, and them brothers definitely turned it out, and it led to more, and we still have a whole album sitting in the vaults that hopefully one day we'll be able to either finish up or just put out what we've done. And that's what it is.
Joe Run, do you still have a studio of your own in Halifax? Like, have you invited all these guys up there to record? I think this is the first time they've all been on camera together. is what I
This
heard.
room is my
Right.
studio. This is where all the Funkbox reloads and all that stuff happens. I usually take my laptop to the cafe just so I change environments, because if I stay in one room, I lose my inspiration very quick. So I've always got to change my environment so to re-spark my brain. But this is where everything kind of just kind of comes together, and before it gets on my laptop, and then I sit in a cafe for a few hours and piece stuff together.
Ox, were you familiar with Joe Run before this track, or was this the first kind of introduction for you?
Yeah, I mean, only through like Phil was mentioning, through around the time when the Diggers with Gratitude, when they had the message boards and all that stuff.
Yeah.
That's kind of when I
Right, yeah.
started noticing
Shouts out to
the
DWG.
rapper's name. Yeah, big shouts to DWG for real. And so that was all the introduction. Everything's kind of happened at the same time. It was all happening so fast.
Hmm.
Yeah.
How about you, Ski? Were you familiar before this, or was this your first
I'm
introduction?
an old man, so I forgot half of the stuff. But I'm gonna just say, I believe my connection to Joe was DWG as well.
Mhm.
I can't. I'm just glad to be connected with the brother because he's so special. I call him the Quincy Jones because he's just, dude. He's got so many things, remakes. Like we said in the rhyme. Whether originals or what I'm saying. Like he just keeps it moving. I'm just so blessed to be able to work with this brother.
2014, never heard it like this before. This is another Rampagers track. Is this a B side or a double A side, or?
Polaris is on the other side, which is Nautilus, a remake of Nautilus. I think I made Nautilus or Polaris first, and then once I had a finished version, that I sampled it and made the beat. I think that's the order of how I did it. I know it wasn't the other way around, because I was a big fan of Nautilus, so I heard other DJ. I think Format also did a cover version of it as well. And once I made Nautilus, because I had to do the keys down to the T and stuff, and the drums and all that stuff. So once I had that, because a lot of people had sampled Nautilus, the original Nautilus, I'm like, what if somebody had a version? They're like, that's Nautilus, but that's not Nautilus. Wait a minute, is that a version I never heard before? So I'm thinking on that level, like, wait a minute, that's a cover version of what version is that? So when I made the beat and I showed those guys, I remember Oxygen going, "Oh man!"
Yeah.
When I saw his reaction, I said, "Okay, let's keep going." Because sometimes I'm in a bubble, so I don't know what sounds good and what doesn't. I know what sounds good to me, but I think Oxygen might have been the first one to go, "Damn!" I said, "Okay, I think this is something, and I just, used the stems from that I made to make a version that was going to, work out and stuff. And I always loved I think Phil introduced me to the live convention album. So the one thing that always stood out for me, and the first thing I always think of, is that and you never heard it like this before. And immediately I thought of, and this is the way we rock the house. So the Run DMC connection of the two, I was like, yeah, this is going to be it. This is going to be super large. Let's do this.
Was
And
fresh.
if I can add one thing too,
Go ahead.
like Joe is a mad scientist, so he has like multiple versions of a lot of joints he did. There's other versions, or at least one other version I could think of that beat that is sick as hell. I don't know if anybody else ever heard it, but I definitely got it on my hard drive. And I actually wanted to
I
do
must
something
have
else to
forgot
that
that.
one too. I don't know if you remember either, Joe.
I don't know
You
if
so
I
much
do.
stuff.
Yeah, I do so much stuff. Like you're gonna have to show me. I don't remember.
Yeah, because I think I took it and I took a part of it and I like looped it up and I was like, yeah, I want to rock this, but never did anything with it. But
Okay.
yeah, crazy.
Damn, we gotta do a part 2 then. Shit.
Yeah, no doubt.
Let's
And
go.
the
Hey,
tour. We set up a
fellas.
tour when we had Filmos Chill and sorry, I'm
So
forgetting.
and my cousin Russ Ace, yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
Was Fresh Pressings International your label, Joe Run?
No, that was a division of DWG because DWG was licensing other people's stuff. And they like the whole reason I even got on DWG. And I remember this conversation with Dave, and he was just like, "We really like your stuff, but we don't know where you fit in. But we know it's going to do well. So let's make a side label so people that want the licensed stuff of Molly Mall and all that stuff that they're licensed stuff don't get confused and think we're just switching up on them. But we like this stuff because they actually put out the instrumentals You Never Got With Me, and they were kind of crossing their fingers going, oh, I hope this does well. And I'm thinking the same thing. I'm like, this is a make or break thing. But I kind of was like, people in Halifax don't get it. But people in UK, like going even back to the 80s, they've always been loving New York, probably more than New York loved New York for a little while. So I had a good feeling. So when it did do well, I was like, okay, well, UK is a business. That's it.
Soma was the other one I was trying to think of. Sorry, from that fantasy tour that I made up in Phil Most Chill's interview. Going back to M-Ski, opening act, can you talk about this track?
I mean, what is there to not good to say about it? I mean, it's Joe Run and me. That's it. Magic is made, baby.
So you were excited to get on another track and project.
Always. I mean, look, man. Anytime Joe calls me, like, you know, people approach you all the time, and it's empty. But it's like with Joe, it's like, you know, you're getting into something that's sincere, that's honest, that's solid, and that, you know, it's going to be long lasting. I mean, I think that's where we all are at this point in the game. It's like if I hop on anything, it's got to have life. Like, I know it's going to live on, and it's going to be solid. And Joe always comes with that element, man. I just love working with him.
I got to say something about this record. I don't think you guys are familiar with this because I have a million stories, but I'm just going to keep this brief. That was a beat that got turned down by somebody else. And it was supposed to be for Ghetto Socks, and he wasn't feeling it. So I kept it. It was already an old beat, and he didn't feel like he fit on it. So when I gave M-Ski, I gave him probably with a bunch of other stuff, and he's like, let's go. So the taste of the people in the States, in Canada, and the UK is kind of reason why I need outside influence, because I may like something that somebody else don't, that thinks is trash, and somebody else may be like, that's the best thing since sliced bread. I don't know. I need to hear from other people that are going to feel it. But this was turned down by a few MCs. But M-Ski did his thing on it. He did a great job on it, and DWG was the one that put that out.
Yeah, shouts to Mr. Crumb. Shouts to Mr. Crumb, as Dre May said.
Yeah. Also, big shouts to Ghetto Socks too, man. It's one of my dude.
We talked about this one a little bit earlier. Joe Run PMC. Joe Run said this was like 10 years in the making.
Oh yeah, we started this back. I think I have like some of the original files we did. I think it was like 2011, 2012 maybe.
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't know how much Joe already told you about it, but yeah, we had the idea that we're gonna like remake like the Zulu Beats radio show on WHBI. We're like influenced by that, and we want to do our own version of what, you know, one of their radio shows would sound like. It kind of changed as we, you know, spent so much time working on it. But yeah, man, it was just like, again, it's like our ode to hip hop back in like 1983, the 1983 era, you know. And yeah, I thought, you know, again, Joe is incredible. Like, I would give him an idea and he would take it and just run with it. And he let me hear it back, and I was like, "Oh my God, are you serious?" You know what I mean? Like, just incredible. And he would do it real fast too, like real fast. And yeah, man, it's that album is definitely one of the feathers in my cap, I guess you would say, of my little rap career. Definitely proud of it. Definitely,
it's a brilliant project.
Yeah, man, I appreciate it. Thank you.
That name is fly too. That's perfect, man.
Oh, Joe on PMC.
I want to make an addition to that. A person that helped me keep on my toes when I thought it was just like, okay, this is going to be good enough. When I heard Paul Nice, rest in peace, Paul Nice. When I heard his production, that was like, oh, this is who I'm up against. So when what was the album? What was the other album? The Febreze Brothers.
Right.
Good thing I heard Febreze Brothers, because then I was looking at my own flaws and saying, okay, now I know how high the water is. So let me try to get up on there. So somebody got to light a fire under you, and Paul Nice lit a fire under me, because that was, in a friendly way, that was my competition. And right from the beginning, like even when we did Smash, remember, Phil, we did Smash.
Oh yeah, I remember very well.
And I heard the B-side. I'm like, what am I even on this record for? Paul is so dope. So in a way, yeah, I was inspired by hearing somebody like Paul to know what I'm up against. So that helped me bring my best out, and why it took so long to put out Joe Run PMC. I think even Phil may have like the early 45 copy that I cut at Jeff's 3 years before it came out, when I was still going to Playlist Retreat. I was able to cut in Jeff's garage an early copy of I think it was Joe Run It.
I think it was, yeah.
Yeah, and I sent it to you, and I just wanted to have it on a record that I can kind of play privately to people and like, check this out, like almost like an acetate version or whatever. And it was getting a lot of positive reviews and stuff from people that I was showing personally. But yeah, Febreze Brothers is kind of the reason why this is where it is.
Yeah, rest in power to Paul Nice.
Yeah, rest in peace.
Yeah, he definitely was very influential as well. But I mean, you did your thing, independent of what he did, which was great. But what you did was equally great in your own right, man. So kudos to both of y'all.
Indeed.
Right on.
Hey, fellas, I gotta break out.
Yeah, I was about to say that. I know you got a prior appointment, so I appreciate you hopping on, Ox.
Yes, sir.
Ox, my man. Salute,
Man.
brother.
All right.
See y'all, man.
Yo, you got to come out of retirement, man. We need you.
Shut up. Shut it up. Yo, also too, happy early birthday, Joe Run.
Oh, thanks, man. I appreciate it.
Yes, sir.
Happy Earth Strong, brother.
Yeah, brother. All right. Yep,
Right,
I'll see you
all right.
guys online.
All right.
Okay.
All right, man. Peace.
Salute, baby.
All right. Yeah, man. Press.
The next one I wanted to talk about one of the most recent, Tougher. Can you talk about that one, Joe Run?
Tougher. What was on the flip side of that?
Well, actually, sorry. Hold on. I wanted to go back one real quick thing. There was one other special guest you had on Joe Run PMC that I wanted to bring on, Jay Quan.
Oh, God.
The great Jay Quan.
God, Jay Quan, what up?
How's it going? How y'all doing?
Yeah, man.
Welcome, Jaquan.
Thanks for joining us. Can you
Thanks for having me.
kind of when you were first kind of introduced to Joe Run?
Oh wow. I believe it was quite a few years back. I think I might have come across some of the instrumentals that he reconstructed, maybe through YouTube. I can't quite remember, but I'm pretty sure that's what it was. It was definitely, I remember those instrumentals catching my ear. And I think that was via YouTube.
And then how did the guest appearance on this project come about?
Oh, that was actually Phil Most came across me through through some of my YouTube adventures, so to speak. And we became friends, and he found out that I was an MC, and we had talked about collaborating for a while. And he sent me the beat to that particular track. He knew that I liked the original that was by Grandmaster Melly Mel and Furious 5, The Truth. He wanted to do The Truth Is Forever, and we took us a while to get it together, but we worked on it for a minute. But yeah, it came to fruition. So yeah, all of this was, of course, as it is these days, internet connections, social media connections.
Yeah, I know we talked about it in Phil Most Chill's interview too, with Dan Lish killed the artwork as well.
Oh, certainly.
Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off, Joe Run, on Tougher.
That's okay. On the other side was Whose House. Tougher was made almost 10 years ago. And it was just sitting around. It was just kind of like on my Bandcamp. And recently, I came across the multis for Who's House, and I already had ideas that of what I would do with that song if I ever had it. Like I have songs that I think is like if I would remix that, this is what I would do. And then later I get the stems and then I just kind of apply to it. So I listen to old school stuff and I have like a list of stuff. If I ever get this, this is what I would do. So I already heard the similarity between LL Cool J, Jack the Ripper, and how they used the same sample as Run's House around the same time. And I knew that they were kind of in competition with each other. So I was trying to make a version of it that was kind of a mash between Jack the Ripper and Run's House, but with the horns. And I didn't want to use the horns from Ashley's Roach clips, so I used them from another source completely. It was Cool in the Gang.
Mm.
So I pitched them to the beat. I said, okay, I know everybody's familiar with the funky drummer beat that they put on there, but they also, I've heard freestyle, with when they were on tour with Houdini, where they actually rhymed on Ashley's Roach clip, and it sounded dope. So I said, okay, let's make it like that freestyle that they did, and I did that, and then Soundwave was like, we need to team this up with something else. I look back at my catalog, I'm like, yeah, well, Topper was always dope. The Cerrone rocket in the pocket thing.
Mm.
Let's team it up with that. And he's like, yeah, brilliant. Let's do it.
That was the most recent. I know you're always constantly kind of looking ahead and on to the next project and everything. Can you talk about sort of what's next?
Yeah. What's next?
I just put in. I just sent off about 3 days ago to the manufacturer the next JBOR record. I do have I have some stuff kind of in the can, and I can only say there is something with Phil. I'm going to leave it at that. Phil knows what it is.
Mm.
I almost forgot. I wasn't sure that was still coming out. But
no,
that would be dope.
It is. Like I said, I got a bunch of stuff. It's like, okay, when is the order of putting stuff out? Like I've been in conversation with Dan the Beat Man about the next Dusty Fingers as well. So that's eventually going to make its way or whatever. Outside of my label, the cat's already out the bag, but I do have something that's on the next Roots album.
That's dope.
So they kind of leaked that out almost 2 years ago. Questlove leaked it out, and he didn't tell me he was going to. And then I get a phone call. It's like, yeah, check it out. Check out Hot 97. I'm like, I'm in Canada. How am I going to check out Hot 97? And then I'm seeing people recording the clips of Funk Flex dropping bombs over the track that I helped produce. And I'm like, what's going on here? Mm-hmm. So he's like, yeah, it's on the album. I was like, well, hurry up, put this album out. Right. It's already been almost a decade. When is this coming out?
That's dope.
And it was with Tierra Whack and Erykah Badu.
Mm.
So I found the sample, I made the beat, and then Quest replayed drums over the sample. They cleared the sample as well, and the song was done. It was one of the first songs done for a while. He played it for me. It's like, this is going to be on there. But I guess they have like 150 songs recorded. And then he said, no, this will be on there. This made the cut. So I'm like, okay, good. Let me know when the album comes out. If it's on vinyl, I'll get the vinyl. I'll buy it. I just need to have it, just to have it. But yeah, that's one of the things.
So Jorun, you were talking about Paul Nice and how you're kind of like friendly, not really rivalry, but you kind of saw yourself in sort of the same lanes and felt like you had to do better, like
set the bar
back and forth. How do you what kinds of projects over the last couple of years or few years have inspired you, have really like hit you after all the things you've seen? Has there been anything that kind of keeps you trying to better yourself?
That's kind of hard to answer because I've been going more backwards. I don't know if you're familiar. There was an interview within the last 5 years with Ad Rock. I think it was on not the Breakfast Club. It was on Shea 45 or one of those things, and they're like, "What do you listen to?" And he's like, "I don't listen to any new music because there's so much stuff from the past that's
Right.
good, that's endlessly I'll be able to discover. What do I need to listen to new stuff for?" That's where I am right now. Like I just recently in the last like 5 years got into these compilations. I'm sure Phil would and the other guys will be familiar. They're called New York Noise.
Actually, not familiar with that.
Oh, okay. There's these compilations. There's like big yellow compilations, and it's kind of like the post-punk, post-disco. Some of them have breaks, but some of the music is just like early New York independent that are aligned with Liquid Liquid and ESG, but
Like
other
no
bands
way.
Yeah.
you probably never heard of before. But they were independents that were selling their records out of you know the same places that you would find ESG and Liquid Liquid. And when I started hearing that stuff and listening to the Clash, which I wasn't into in the '80s, but now I'm super into them. I listen to that old stuff because um, and I think it makes sense now that I listen to this stuff because at the time where I felt I made my best hip hop was when I was the most excited about it, when there wasn't a lot of hip hop out. You were listening to other music. And Phil, I had this conversation with Phil about
Sure.
this, about the hearing Tears for Fears being cut up on the radio by Chuck Chillout. And that was my eureka moment. I'm like, that's the connection between Tears for Fears and hip hop. So I listen to a lot of old stuff so I can get in that mind frame of not being flooded by what's current or even having a lot of hip hop in front of me. Because the more hip hop I have in front of me, the more I'm trying to sound like them. So if I kind of blank that slate and start fresh and be okay, what was hot when I was first getting into hip hop, when I first heard my first Kiss FM tape? I was listening to Hall and Oates. I was listening to a lot of '80s pop. I was listening to some punk stuff at the Video Arcade. Let me listen to that stuff so I can get in that mind frame of like hearing something going, oh, and then I go from there. I got to clean my slate. I listen to too much like hip hop stuff, and then I end up trying to sound like them. So let me erase that at least once
Yeah.
a week out of my brain. Go listen to some Brazilian music or '80s pop just to wipe that slate clean. So I got a fresh ear coming in, and I'm coming from a point of zero. Let's start here.
Yeah.
And that's kind of where I get my inspiration from now. I have to erase the slate and then start.
Hmm.
Cleanse the palate. Going back for a second, Jaquan or the rest of the guys, do you guys have the Run's House stems, or are you guys all texting Joe Run asking for those right now?
I don't have it.
I do have them. I think I did probably get them from Joe Run. I
Okay.
did, or I got them from somebody. I don't know.
So
I do have them though.
yeah, like all that stuff is just incredible to me. Like all the stems and multi-track stuff. Just for a while, it felt like kind of stagnant, but more recently, hearing the hip hop stuff has just been incredible for me. Like I thought, a lot of stuff was, super complex, but then sometimes I don't know if this is the case for you guys, but like hearing the stems, it's like, oh, it's pretty simple. Like, it may be just, these sets of instruments or these samples, like it's not as, it's not as like magical in some respects. Like, yeah, it's magical that how simple it was like put together for me. I don't know if that's the same experience for everybody else, but
Well, if I can add, I don't know if you, I'm sure everybody has the stems for King of Rock, right?
I do.
Right. So even though I did a remix for King of Rock, just to hear what Larry Smith did, it was a mix of drum machine and live instruments together to give them that sound. The cymbals were real cymbals, but the bass and the kick and the snare were drum machine. The cowbell was real. And I always wondered, like, how they get that big sound, and is it live? Is it drum machine? There's some imperfection. What are they doing? So when I got the stems, that actually helped me record other stuff outside of hip hop because, like, oh, okay, because I really didn't know. It'd be invaluable to watch Larry Smith in the studio recording it, but having the stems is like kind of the next best thing, right? Because then you can mute stuff. You can actually hear them. 3, 2, 1, go, and you hear the conversations and everything. Takes that they didn't use, and that all helped me with my multi-tracking for future stuff. Because like I said, all I knew was hip hop, but to know these other stuff from Larry Smith was a real musician, could play guitar and all these other stuff. To hear it from their point of view actually helped me become a better producer.
Yeah, Larry Smith was a great one. I know Jay Quan could probably really speak on the greatness of Larry Smith, but yeah, he's one of those guys. He doesn't get talked about nearly enough.
Not at all. No, early super producer, and as much musician as he was, a hip hop producer. Just played on all the first, a lot of the first Curtis Blow stuff, and even the spoof record, the parody record, Rappin' Rodney. When Rodney Dangerfield, that record that came out, Rappin' Rodney, came out in like 80, 81. He played the bass on that. I mean, he worked with, he worked with Confunction, as well as like Houdini and Run DMC and all, Fat Boys and all that stuff that he did. But before I forget, I just want to piggyback off something you said, Mordecai. You're talking about the simplicity of some of those tracks. I think that because we are what we are now, so much has happened in 30 or 40 years. I think if we saw that stuff put together at the time, the way that they were sampling, I think it would have probably been more magical if we saw it happen at that time. Like, I'm working on a few things with Davey DMX, and he produced Run's House and Beats to the Rhymes. And, I was at his house just digging through some of his stuff, and I come across the disc, and I'm like, this is everything from Run's House. And he was like, yeah, the disc actually had Run's House on it. And it wasn't a big deal to him, but for me, it's like, this is magic. And I'm like, do you have the actual machine that you did this on? Oh yeah. I was like, well, we need to record this. This was before Premiere was doing his thing where he breaks the beats down. And I was like, we could do a podcast, we could do this and that. And I don't think he saw it the way that I saw it, because he made it, and it's not a big deal to him. But for me, it's like, to hold that disc with Run's House on it, with a magic marker, it just wasn't a big deal to him. So yeah, I think it'd be a little more magical if we could have heard it when it was done, because the way the samples were looped and sometimes not looped, it was very interesting.
Yeah, I don't want to say that it ruined the magic necessarily. I think there's magic in the simplicity and
certainly
sort of my thought of how sort of just impossible, or like my brain couldn't fathom how certain tracks came together. But then to hear the multi-track systems, like okay, that makes
definitely
more sense. But it's still like impressive. You're like, okay, like I'm trying to think, some other ones like I want to say Naughty by Nature, like one of theirs. It was like or maybe Onyx. I don't know. It was one of those where it was like, man, they made a huge hit out of just some simple things, and that's crazy. I mean, just amazing.
You got to have an ear for what goes together well too, though.
Right.
Not always as simple as just doing it,
Joe Run, do you have your own record press? I know a lot of things kind of came out of necessity. We talked earlier about filling in sessions as an MC when an MC wouldn't show up. So I was curious, like at some point you might run into roadblocks or hurdles with record companies or labels. So I was curious if like you had your own record press or.
A friend of mine, my old roommate, built his own from scratch. So for a while I was cutting on it, and he was actually just getting these sheets of plexiglass and cutting them on a circular saw and cutting whatever I want on a machine he built. And he built a second one for another friend of mine, another DJ friend who used to do raves. But I mean, this guy was like the guy that could build a sound system. His name is Fred Bissonette, and he's still a DJ Nexus 6. He was my roommate, and I collabed with him for a little while in the early 2000s. But he was where I was cutting a lot of private stuff as well. I have like other connections in the States that actually do like a more solid cut of like, let me just show you. I don't know if I showed this before. I did the Beastie Boys Missing album, the White House, and I had the plane going on the White House. And this is the Desperado single they were supposed to put out, and it's all sealed now. But I made the label.
This is before they got dropped from Def Jam.
The movie that they did, Tougher Than Leather with Run DMC, they played the
Right.
song Desperado, right?
Oh,
So
gotcha.
I remade the Desperado, the beat. I redid the cuts. I knew all the samples, and the ho was from original concept, Pump That Bass. Like everything was known. So I just pieced it together and I synchronized it so the beat drops are the same place. And I was just like, let me do my own cut. And I only pressed one. And I also did like another thing where I just remade. This is all private presses as well. The LL Cool J single that should have came out and didn't, the football rap. So that's also a private cut. So I do press my own private stuff through connections through people. And there's one record pressing plant in Canada, Red Spade Records, was all females. They have their record press and they cut their thing or and sometimes I get stuff cut through them. But that's not for mass consumption or mass production stuff. It's more to just, when I have nothing to post on Instagram, let me just, hey, I'm still here. Instead of me just saying I'm still here, just like, hey, check this out. This is a cool thing I just recently did. Sometimes people will ask to buy it and I'll sell it to them, but I also know people will resell it and want to make a lot of money, so I won't sell it cheap. But I do things like that where I do my private presses just to keep my presence on Instagram going in between real releases.
Going back to the Beastie Boys real quick, I think Cookie Puss and Rock Hard was maybe a 12-inch that I was thinking about as like a early Def Jam thing for them with like the maroon label. I think
that was the first one on Def Jam, I think.
No, that was on Rat Cage Records.
Okay. Well, it was on Def Jam too, though, right?
Before Def Jam.
What was the one, Beastie Rap or something? What was the first?
Beastie Groove and Rock Hard was on.
Yeah. That was the first. So Rock Hard was okay. Yeah. You guys would definitely
know. Jay, my son just came in, so we're gonna wrap up. I know Joe Run's got a million stories, and we'd love to hear a lot more. Was there anything else you wanted to mention or talk about as far as Joe Run and connection with him?
No, I'm good, man. I just, want to salute him. I mean, I've never directly saluted him. He's heard me praise him, or see me praise him online. But, I love what he does is because, as one who used to try to attempt to remake stuff just because, it's no instrumental to this. It would be fun to make one. I never really completed any of it to the degree he does because it's tedious. It's very tedious work. Yeah. And when he does it, he does it to the degree that like every cut is exactly like the DJ cut it. Even if the DJ, I won't say made a mistake, but just a certain way the DJ finessed it, there might have been a little offbeat. He cuts it. You can't tell, for LL to hear, Rock the Bells, instrumental. And I don't know if they used it or not. I don't know if Z-Trip remade his own, but I think LL is aware. Do you know, Joe Run, if LL was aware of that instrumental you made?
He knows about not that one, but there was other ones they asked me to remake. When he got inducted to the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, and he did the Go Cut Creator Go. That was me.
Incredible.
So I did the first Go Cut Creator Go with no vocals on it, and I remade it, and I also did It Gets No Rougher. Mm-hmm. He didn't have that one either. So they do perform those ones, but
yes.
LL wanted a version of Rock the Bells with the bells on it. So Z-Trip did that one for him.
Okay. Because I know before you did that, a lot of people were using that on B-Boy Records, that Christmas record that they had done. I forgot the group, but it was
I know what you're talking about, yeah.
It's very much like Rock the Bells, there's some differences in there, but people were using that until you made yours. And, like I said, I just want to, take my hat off to you because not only the remakes you do, just everything, even the way that you put your shows together and the time that you take, like how you did the reimagined Run DMC thing. Like those are things that as a kid, if I had the time to do, I was busy trying to write, and my DJing thing was way more in the back seat. But that's the kind of thing, if I had the dedication and time, I would have done that. So I want to take my hat off to you for doing it to the level that, the Giants saw you, the Jazzy Jeffs and the Theodores, and everybody respects when you do stuff,
Indeed.
So, yeah, man, it's, whenever people bring you up, I always say, man, yeah, he's incredible. He's what I would have aspired to be if I wasn't an MC. So, hats off to you again.
Thank you.
Dreddy
Yeah.
SRS from Soul Rebel Syndicate says he hates Jorun Bombay because he makes his checks mad small. Like he can't afford all the releases. He can't keep up. Every time he wants to get 2 copies of everything, and I hear that. MSki, same question to you. Was there anything else you wanted to? I mean, we barely scratched the surface of like Funkbox Reloaded, so I know there's a lot more that we could talk about. But is there anything you wanted to mention before we go?
I know we redid Jack the Ripper. Do you remember that, Joe?
Yeah, we did. Yeah.
That never came out, but I'm just saying, it's like this dude has timeless amount of classics that he just remakes, and it sounds like they were so. That's just that talent alone is crazy, But then you have the next level of production. A lot of people don't pay attention to details of production like he does. So, there are different levels to this man. So I'm just, like I said again, just like Jay and Phil. I'm blessed to have met him and to have projects under the belt with him, and hopefully we got much more in the chamber.
Yeah, we'd love to hear that Rampagers album see the light of day too. Phil, anything you want to add on?
Oh yeah, hey Joe, man. You my brother from way back, man, and always just been a pleasure to do work with you, man. And hey, we ain't done, man. There's more to come. I mean,
absolutely.
Yeah, but Joe is not only is he just a super creative guy, but he's also a great guy, really good person. So anytime you can get that combination of somebody who is super talented and also is not like terrible to deal with, it's always a joy. So man, great guy, and yeah, man, let's do some more, man, for real.
Let's go.
Absolutely.
I wanted to say, Phil and Joe, Melly Mel loves The Truth Is Forever, and when we first did it, because of COVID, he couldn't. He wants to do a version with him on it, but we couldn't do it because of COVID in the beginning. He couldn't get anywhere to record his vocals. But now that everything's open, I know it's been a minute, but I love to revisit that with Mel. He wants to do it.
Let's go.
Let's
go. That would be a dream come true.
That's automatic.
He loves it. He loves it. Yeah.
Joe Run, I think we talked about kind of where to people should follow you on Instagram. That's probably the best bet. But you have a very active YouTube. Is that still going on as well?
YouTube, Instagram kind of took over YouTube because Instagram is more immediate. It's on my phone. I could just check it all the time. So Instagram is probably the most reliable way.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Cool. Sam, did you have anything else you wanted to ask before we send it off?
Oh no, just I appreciate everybody here taking their time. I mean, I think it goes without saying, Jorun Bombay, pretty much everything he does is thorough. He executes it like to the nth degree. So I think, man, this has been really enlightening for me. So just respect for everything you've done, and looking forward to seeing what's next.
Let's go, Joe. Let's go.
Joe Run, did you have anything to say before we sign off here?
Yeah, we didn't really get to talk about. I'm just going to keep it brief, but the alternate universe. Just wait till you see what's coming up. That Run DMC was just the tip of the iceberg. I actually recorded in a week 10 more alternate universes because I was so inspired by it, and I finally have my grasp on like how this thing works. So you just wait. There's more coming. You're going to be super impressed.
And that tip of the iceberg, that's the clip on YouTube that you're referring to for the alternate universe?
The Run DMC thing?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, because it's actually on my podcast, the full version.
Oh, Funkbox Reloaded? Okay.
Yeah, that's so I actually recorded 10 different other ones unrelated to Run DMC, but other 80s artists. And it sounds exactly like them. Oh my gosh, I've been listening to them every day because I'm just like, wow, I can't believe we can do this now. But I have to put context to it. So there's a skit at the beginning, so people know it's not the real artist. I'm not trying to fool anybody. It's a parody, but a respectful parody.
Mm-hmm. So that's a good note to end on. I have a lot more questions and you have a lot more stories, and I just, we're running over. I appreciate everybody's time, so I want to wrap it up here. Thanks to everybody that listened in. Thank you, Jorun Bombay, for taking the time to talk with us. Thank you, Phil Most Chill, MSki, Jay Quan, Oxygen.
Thank you.
Sam. Yeah, thank you to everyone.
For having me.
Thank you
Y'all
for
have a good
having me.
rest of your day. Peace, y'all.
Salute,
Take it
Joe.
easy.
Peace,
Peace,
guys.
peace.
Peace.
Peace.